Behind every viral prank video lie countless attempts that never made it online because they went catastrophically wrong. In this video, we're uncovering 6 of the most disturbing deaths caused by pranks ever recorded, and every single one ended the same devastating way. It was October 3rd, 2015, in a quiet suburb of central Ohio. The attic of one split-level home sat above a dark basement drop, its structure aging in ways no one in the house thought about. Tyler Moore, 17, balanced school with caring for his grandmother, who lived with his family and relied on him for daily errands. He was quiet, rarely involved in anything reckless, but he followed 2 extroverted friends who constantly pushed for clips that might gain traction online. Their humor revolved around staged reactions and jump scares, hoping something might be shared enough to get minor attention on social platforms. They used basic gear, a phone on a small stairwell tripod, handheld lights, and a cheap crate reinforced with mesh they bought secondhand. The raccoon they trapped the evening before had already shown stress, pacing, clawing, and biting at the crate's edge, but they assumed they could control the moment long enough to provoke a reaction from the homeowner's older brother, who slept downstairs. The stunt was more dangerous than anything they had attempted. A wild animal in a confined space, a cluttered attic with brittle surfaces and limited visibility. The boys dismissed it, focused instead on setting up angles that showed Tyler handling the crate while the others filmed from the attic stairs. The stairwell phone video shows the crate being unlatched. As soon as the door cracked open, the raccoon erupted out, scrambling along the narrow joists. The boys startled, and the handheld lights swung wildly, washing the attic in uneven beams. Tyler climbed fully into the attic to contain the animal, stepping between joists where insulation dipped unevenly. The footage captured how limited his footing was and how close he was to the drywall panel covering the recessed storage space, which was not supported by joists and could not hold an adult's weight. The raccoon darted back toward him, then suddenly leapt past his left arm. Tyler turned sharply toward the movement, planting his right foot onto the brittle plasterboard. The panel cracked and collapsed immediately under his estimated 160-pound weight. His weight punched through, and the rest collapsed beneath him. The video caught the exact moment his body dropped through the ceiling, dust and broken drywall trailing behind. He fell about 14 feet, landing on the concrete basement floor with a blunt, forceful impact. His friends' screams echoed on the recording as they ran down the stairs, finding Tyler unconscious, bleeding heavily from the head, with visible skull indentation. One friend called 911 immediately. Emergency services arrived in roughly 4 minutes, initiated CPR, and transported him to a nearby trauma center. Resuscitation efforts continued, but he never regained consciousness. Investigators confirmed the collapse occurred due to weight placed on unsupported drywall. The coroner reported multiple skull fractures, bleeding around the brain, and widespread injury inside the brain itself from the sudden stop against concrete. Cause of death was severe traumatic brain injury. Afterward, Tyler's grandmother lost the support she depended on, prompting a relative to move in temporarily. The 2 friends faced juvenile charges for unlawful wildlife handling and completed community service focused on public safety education. It was May 14th, 2016, on a narrow residential stretch in Bishopston, Bristol. The early light was flat and cool, and the road was quiet in a way that made small sounds stand out. Nothing appeared dangerous, but the conditions made any unexpected disruption more jarring than usual. Owen Clark, 29, followed this route nearly every morning. He balanced part-time work as an amateur running coach with a small job at a local sports shop, using jogging to manage long-standing anxiety. He coached kids from low-income families on afternoons he wasn't working, drawing occasional support from a community youth program and a small local athletic brand that donated gear for his team. For runners like him, the technical focus was on stable footing, predictable surfaces, and maintaining awareness at crossings. The intersection he used was considered safe because it had mild traffic and clear sight lines. Despite that, Owen was aware that the road had one quirk, a blind driveway, where vehicles could emerge without much warning. He compensated by slowing slightly as he passed it, a habit verified in his GPS log. That morning, he kept to the same routine, aiming for a steady pace before meeting 2 junior athletes later that week. He was preparing them for a small charity relay and wanted to test part of the route himself. Across the street, a group of teenagers had been lingering around the area for 2 days. discussing a prank meant to record startled reactions from runners. They carried a handheld air horn normally used at parties. One of them had checked traffic patterns earlier and noted that mornings were quiet. They chose a hedge across from the intersection, believing they were positioned safely away from the road and out of sight. That morning, at 7:16 a.m., Owen approached the crossing. Weather reports later confirmed a slight drop in temperature that made the road's surface firmer than usual, affecting traction slightly. Witnesses saw him adjust his stride as he prepared to cross. At the same moment, an SUV rolled out from the blind driveway at a slow but steady speed. The driver was estimated at approximately 18 miles per hour, giving limited time to react. The teenage group crouched lower, waiting for Owen to reach the midpoint of the intersection, ignoring the sound of tires they likely heard but dismissed as distant. At 7:18 a.m., the air horn detonated from just a few feet away. CCTV from a home across the street, later reviewed by investigators, captured how abruptly Owen reacted. His body jolted sideways and backward from the shock, his left foot landing on the curb edge at an angle that caused his ankle to twist. He lost balance fully and fell off the curb into the road. The SUV's driver applied the brakes instantly, but the distance was too short to prevent impact. The front bumper struck Owen's right side and head as he was still falling. The bumper impacted his chest and head simultaneously, causing him to rotate and hit the asphalt with severe force. Two nearby residents ran to him within seconds, pulling him clear of the vehicle. The driver called emergency services immediately. Others flagged down traffic and attempted basic first aid. Paramedics arrived 7 minutes after the call and initiated advanced life support, but his injuries were extensive. He was transported to a nearby hospital and pronounced dead shortly after. The coroner's report cited blunt head trauma with a depressed skull fracture, traumatic injury to the cervical spine, and massive intracranial bleeding. The cause of death was fatal blunt force trauma consistent with a pedestrian vehicle impact. In the weeks that followed, the running club Owen helped lead paused all group sessions and organized a memorial to support youth coaching. Police used CCTV to identify the teenagers, who were later charged with public nuisance and reckless endangerment. It was September 3, 2014, on a shaded section of the Timber Ridge Trail on Vancouver Island. The dim light and slick surfaces made sudden movement riskier than most people realized. Marissa Hale, 33, had built a quiet reputation in the community as both a midwife and an advocate for low-impact urban hiking. She split her days between clinical work and leading short mindfulness walks that drew locals who preferred gentle, accessible trails. She had no sponsors in the commercial sense, but a regional wellness nonprofit often asked her to record brief nature segments for their social pages, encouraging her to stay active on familiar routes. The terrain on Timber Ridge was typical of coastal forest: narrow footpaths, wet roots, and patches of moss that could behave unpredictably when stepped on at speed. Marissa understood these conditions well. She trained beginner hikers to slow down on descents and to treat shaded areas like black ice. Her approach was methodical rather than adventurous. She chose this late afternoon walk as a decompressing routine after a difficult birth case the night before. The plan was straightforward, a loop she had completed dozens of times, with no technical sections and minimal elevation change. Unbeknownst to her, two acquaintances, ages 19 and 21, had been on the trail roughly an hour earlier, preparing a prank intended to record exaggerated fear reactions for online video content. They were dressed in a full-body bear suit, purchased online, bulky enough to resemble a distant wildlife silhouette in low light. They chose a bend in the trail where visibility narrowed for several steps. Dismissing the ethical concerns one of them had mentioned about startling people on wet, low-traction terrain, weather advisories had noted lingering slickness from the previous night, but they assumed a quick scare posed no real danger. At around 5:12 p.m., Marissa approached the bend at an even pace. Her GPS data later showed a steady walking speed of roughly 3 miles per hour, with no abrupt changes. The forest around her was quiet, except for the water runoff near a creek a few yards downhill. As she rounded the curve, the costumed pranksters stepped out and produced a loud, guttural roar. They were close enough that the shape was unmistakably large, though obviously unnatural upon prolonged look, something she didn't have time to process. She spun around instantly and broke into a downhill run. One prankster was holding a handheld camera, and the recorded footage showed the sequence with jarring clarity. Marissa's stride accelerated rapidly, her arms tense, her footfalls loud against wet ground. The camera caught roughly 10 seconds of her descent before the operator stumbled and the device fell sideways into ferns. In the final frame before it tipped, she was sprinting toward a narrow creekside ledge bordered by moss-covered stones and exposed roots, approximately 13 feet above a jagged rock outcrop below. She slipped on a slick patch just as she attempted to turn. Witness analysis and rescue markings indicated her right foot landed on a thin layer of wet moss over the stone lip, causing it to slide forward while her upper body momentum carried her over the edge. She pitched sideways, crossed the shallow lip without breaking, and fell approximately 13 feet onto the jagged rocks below. The impact produced immediate loss of consciousness, evident from her lack of movement on the recording and confirmed by the position in which rescuers found her. The pranksters reached her within seconds, but hesitated, visibly shaken according to later statements. One dialed 911 at 5:14 p.m., and responders arrived 18 minutes later. She was transported to hospital with massive head trauma, including a basilar skull fracture and brainstem injury, and died during emergency surgery. The coroner described the injuries as consistent with a short fall onto rock from a height of 13 feet, including extensive swelling and trauma to the brainstem and surrounding tissue. The cause of death was severe head trauma from the fall. In the aftermath, the two pranksters were charged with criminal negligence, causing death. Marissa's community clinic organized a small memorial walk, and her hiking group paused activities for several weeks, citing concerns about trail safety awareness. It was November 12, 2017, on a small grazing property outside Dubbo in New South Wales. Several farmhands later noted that the paddocks were unusually quiet, with a faint hum near the fence line that most of them ignored. Lachlan Reed, 21, was midway through his traineeship as a landscape gardener. He split his time between coursework, local yard contracts, and volunteering for elderly neighbors who relied on him for pruning and minor repairs. He was patient, soft-spoken, and methodical, traits that made him popular among clients. His training emphasized safe handling of outdoor hazards, snakes, wasp nests, and sharp branches, though he had minimal exposure to large, established feral bee colonies. He wore basic work gear most days: canvas pants, steel-toe boots, and a light, breathable shirt meant for yard labor rather than wildlife encounters. That afternoon, a fence line with thick wooden posts, where a substantial feral bee colony had nested inside a hollow knot of timber. The hive was roughly 2 feet across, larger than it appeared from a distance, and bees entered and exited steadily. Lachlan knew bees were common in the region, but he had no reason to believe this colony was aggressive. He had never shown serious allergic reactions, only mild swelling after the occasional sting from garden insects. The group he was with had gathered for a casual break after clearing brush nearby. A few had been drinking more heavily, though witnesses confirmed Lachlan had only taken a couple of beers, enough to slightly relax him but not impair judgment. Boredom drifted into reckless talk, and someone suggested provoking the hive to see a brief swarm for a phone clip. Lachlan initially brushed off the idea, but the others urged him on, insisting it would just puff out a cloud of bees for a moment. No one acknowledged the heat advisory that day, noting increased insect defensiveness in high temperatures and low humidity. Around 4:46 p.m., Lachlan picked up a small stone and walked toward the fence. Witness accounts and phone footage confirmed he tossed the rock lightly, striking the lower edge of the hive. The reaction was immediate. A thick surge of bees flowed out in a dense, vibrating cloud that likely contained hundreds of worker bees, moving rapidly due to the disturbed hive. Lachlan turned, waving his arms instinctively, and began running back toward the group. Within seconds, several bees latched onto the back of his head and neck. Witnesses saw him slow abruptly, coughing and pressing a hand to his throat. He stumbled, struggled to inhale, and collapsed to his knees. Multiple stings were visible across his scalp and jawline. Friends tried removing stingers with fingernails and applied wet cloths, but swelling progressed rapidly. One person called emergency services at 4:47 p.m. Paramedics arrived 8 minutes later and found him with severe facial and neck swelling, hypotension, and a constricted airway. He went into cardiac arrest en route and was pronounced dead soon after arrival. The coroner described a rapid, severe anaphylactic reaction triggered by multiple stings concentrated on the head and neck, which caused his airway to swell to the point that breathing was nearly impossible. The lack of oxygen caused further organ damage, consistent with what is observed in massive bee sting-induced anaphylaxis. In the aftermath, the landscaping company he trained with introduced mandatory allergy testing, epinephrine training, and emergency response instruction for all workers. A community fundraiser helped support his partner, and several friends later disclosed ongoing guilt over encouraging the dare that led to his death. It was August 18, 2018, on the wooden pier at Brighton, UK. Early pedestrians noted gulls circling overhead, but the pier itself appeared calm and quiet. No one present anticipated that the day's lighthearted antics would culminate in a lethal accident. Jordan Pike, 19, was a first-year university student studying marine biology. He was quiet and diligent, often keeping late hours studying or volunteering for local environmental cleanup programs. Despite his reserved nature, he had a playful streak with close friends, occasionally agreeing to harmless pranks. Jordan was in typical casual attire that morning: jeans, a lightweight jacket, and trainers. His environment, a public pier with timber decking over open water, was stable under normal conditions, but required care when footing was compromised, and the railings were weathered and partially weakened from years of saltwater exposure. He had recently started documenting wildlife along the coast for a small social media following, balancing study and hobby with modest camera gear. Jordan's friends often encouraged viral-style antics for amusement, though he generally avoided reckless stunts. That morning, he had consumed a small amount of alcohol, but was not impaired. The technical risk lay in the pier itself: timber planks prone to slipperiness, uneven boards, and a rotten section of railing hidden from casual view, factors unnoticed by Jordan or his friends in their playful mood. The group decided on a prank after finding Jordan asleep on a bench. The idea was simple: scatter fries over him and film seagulls descending to feed. The friends positioned him near the railing and recorded, expecting only minor squawking and pecking. No one inspected the railing's condition. The ocean breeze and residual mild intoxication slightly impaired Jordan's balance, but the pranksters disregarded caution, prioritizing laughter and potential video views. As the birds intensified their pecking, Jordan awoke abruptly, startled by the flurry of wings and snapping beaks. Footage from a witness phone shows him thrashing to shoo the gulls, stumbling toward the pier edge in panic. He leaned against the rotten railing, which failed beneath his weight. Jordan toppled forward, plunging roughly 8 feet into the water below, striking the underside support beams on descent and sustaining immediate cranial and upper torso trauma. A bystander reacted quickly, jumping into the water and pulling Jordan to the surface within minutes. He was unconscious, gasping and coughing seawater. Emergency services arrived approximately 8 minutes later. Attempts at resuscitation continued on site and during transport to hospital, but he never regained consciousness. The combined blunt trauma and aspiration proved unsurvivable. The coroner's report described a basilar skull fracture with brainstem injury, significant seawater aspiration, and pulmonary edema. The cause of death was listed as combined blunt craniocerebral trauma and drowning. Aftermath measures included pier authorities inspecting and replacing multiple decayed railing sections. Jordan's friends faced minor legal consequences, including criminal trespass citations, while the incident prompted local campaigns warning of pier hazards and the dangers of alcohol-impaired pranks near water. It was August 24, 2013, on Lake Mille Lacs, Minnesota. Despite the calm appearance, the lake's glacial origins created sudden, shallow rock shelves hidden beneath deceptively deep water, a hazard largely unnoticed by casual visitors. Ethan Morales, 25, worked seasonally as a lifeguard at a local municipal pool and occasionally picked up shifts at nearby community centers. He had grown up swimming competitively, with precise knowledge of rescue techniques, risk assessment, and water dynamics. Known for his calm demeanor under pressure, Ethan was both conscientious and methodical, often volunteering to supervise younger swimmers or assist in safety courses. His friends frequently sought his guidance during water activities, confident in his ability to respond quickly in emergencies. He carried a small waterproof wrist camera for personal footage, usually capturing laps or boating excursions. His gear was minimal but functional: swim trunks, a light t-shirt, and no life jacket, consistent with routine lake outings where water depth had always seemed sufficient. Ethan's technical awareness of water entry angles, diving mechanics, and submerged hazards made him exceptionally cautious. Yet even he could misjudge depth when distracted or rushed. The wrist camera footage later showed some motion blur due to rapid movement, making the dive sequence clear but not perfectly sharp. The group of friends that day had been drinking lightly, and unbeknownst to Ethan, two had devised a staged drowning scare to film his rescue reaction for an online prank video. They had not accounted for the lake's irregular underwater topography. No one checked the depth or mapped the submerged rock shelves. Their assumption was that Ethan would perform a controlled dive, but the pranker's timing and location placed him directly above one of the hidden ledges. As the prank began, one friend flailed in the water, calling for help. Ethan, reacting instinctively, kicked off the boat's shoes and lunged headfirst toward the commotion at a shallow angle, not realizing the water above the shelf was only 2 to 3 feet deep. The wrist-mounted camera shows him leaping cleanly over the gunnel, but the impact with the rock shelf occurred immediately upon entry, causing a dull, resonant thud. His arms instinctively folded inward, and his body went rigid, sinking immediately, with no attempt to swim or resurface. Two bystanders in another boat noticed the sudden splash and rushed to assist, pulling him to the surface within about 40 seconds. CPR began immediately, but Ethan displayed no spontaneous breathing. Emergency medical services arrived approximately 12 minutes later, transported him to a regional hospital, and he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Witnesses corroborated the sequence. The wrist camera footage provided a clear but slightly blurred record of the dive and impact, accurately showing the sequence of events. The coroner's report described a complete cervical spinal cord transection, resulting from hyperflexion on impact with the submerged rock shelf. Secondary hypoxic brain injury occurred due to apnea following the spinal cord disruption. The cause of death was listed as atlantoaxial fracture with complete spinal cord transection. Ethan's family emphasized his lifelong commitment to helping others in water emergencies, which made the sudden, preventable death especially painful. Authorities reviewed the wrist camera footage and statements from the prank organizers for potential negligent manslaughter charges. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.